It was one of those Friday nights where everything felt off from the start. But there was one nuance: my roommate. If I could only imagine what he and I would be doing in the near future. But let's go in order. I was sitting on our ratty old couch, scrolling through Netflix, half listening to the buzz of the city leaking in through the open window. My roommate Ethan had gone out drinking with some of his law school buddies. I wasn't invited, and I wasn't sure if that stung or if I was just used to it by now. We'd been living together for almost a year, and if you'd asked me back then, I'd have said it would be strictly platonic. He was straight, confident, the kind of guy who could charm a bartender and get the next round for free without even trying. I was quieter, a freelance writer who preferred bookstores to bars and long walks over loud parties. We were different, but somehow we clicked. At least enough to split rent and not kill each other. Except, lately, things had started to shift. Or maybe I was just paying more attention. The way Ethan would linger in the kitchen, even when he wasn't cooking. The way his laugh got softer when it was just the two of us. Or the way he sat a little too close on the couch when we watched reruns of The Office. Like personal space wasn't really a concept that applied anymore. I tried not to read into it. He was touchy with everyone. Friendly, warm. It didn't mean anything. Still, I couldn't help the way my heart jumped every time he brushed past me. It was after midnight when I heard the front door open. I muted the TV and looked up as Ethan stumbled in, shirt half untucked, hair a mess, one shoe in his hand. He smelled like whiskey and cologne and late-night regret. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual. He blinked at me like he wasn't expecting me to still be awake. "You're up." "Yeah." "Couldn't sleep." He dropped his shoe, kicked the door shut behind him, and leaned against it like it was holding him up. He stopped, frowned, and tried again. "They left early." "Well, not early, but, you know." I nodded. "Want some water?" He didn't answer, just pushed off the door and walked toward me, stopping a little too close. I could see the redness in his cheeks, the slight wobble in his stance. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost cautious. "Sure." He looked down, like the floor was suddenly fascinating. "I don't think I like going out anymore. It's loud, it's fake, everyone's trying so hard." I tilted my head. "Then why go?" He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and for the first time, I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Because I don't know what else to do. We stood in silence for a second. The only sound was the buzz of a streetlight outside and the hum of the fridge in the next room. Then Ethan stepped forward, and everything changed. Ethan's eyes didn't leave mine as he stepped closer, and for a split second, it felt like time cracked open. The sounds from the street outside, the buzz of the fridge, even my own breathing, they all fell away. It was like the room itself had shrunk down to just the space between us, and every inch of it was electric. He wasn't touching me. Not yet. But the heat from his body radiated across the narrow gap like a current. I stayed completely still, afraid that if I moved even an inch, whatever spell we were caught in would break. He looked lost. And I didn't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean truly, deeply disoriented, like he was standing on the edge of something he didn't know how to name. "I'm drunk," he said after a beat, voice unsteady, almost apologetic. I should probably shut up. I tried to smile, but it felt thin, nervous. "You're not saying anything." "Exactly," he said. "Because if I start talking, I might say things I can't unsay." There was a pause, a long one. Not awkward, just charged. I tilted my head slightly, my voice low. "What if you did? Say something, I mean." He blinked slowly, as if he was processing that it was okay to speak. "That I wouldn't run. You ever think," he started, then hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always did when he was anxious, "that maybe you've been lying to yourself for a long time?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, at the way the overhead light caught the edges of his jaw, at the way his eyes darted between mine and the floor, like he couldn't bear to hold eye contact too long, but couldn't let go of it either. Yeah, I said finally. I think about that a lot. He let out a breath, slow and uneven. I don't know what I'm doing, man. I just know I don't want to keep pretending like none of this matters. My pulse was hammering now, so loud I was sure he could hear it. None of what? This, he said, gesturing vaguely between us. You, me, the way it feels when I'm around you. I keep trying to write it off as just friendship, or just comfort, or whatever bullshit label makes it easier to ignore, but he trailed off. I waited, gave him the space he needed. I come home, and I'm fine until I see you, he said. Then it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. You walk into the room and suddenly everything else feels off. Like there's this hum or pressure or something, and it doesn't go away until you're close. He laughed nervously. That sounds insane, doesn't it? No, I said quietly. It doesn't. Ethan dropped onto the couch beside me, hard, like gravity finally caught up with him. He sat back, legs spread slightly, elbows on his knees, holding his beer like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I've never kissed a guy, he said after a moment. Never even thought about it before this. But now, I think about it all the time. And not just kissing. I think about what it would be like to wake up and have you be the first person I see. To come home and know you're here. To be able to sit like this and not have to pretend like I don't want to. He stopped, caught himself. I swallowed hard. Don't want to what? He looked at me. Eyes dark and glassy, and there was no hesitation this time. Touch you! The words hung there, suspended in the air like smoke. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to clear it. I don't get it. I don't get why it's you. I don't get how I got here. But the second I walked in tonight and saw you on the couch, I felt safe. Like the night could fall apart completely, and if you were still here, I'd be okay. I didn't know what to say. My chest was tight, not with fear or confusion, but with something heavy and tender. Something that felt like every silent moment we'd shared over the past year was finally speaking out loud. I reached out, almost cautiously, and rested my hand on his. You don't have to figure it all out right now, I said. You just have to be honest with yourself. He didn't move at first, just stared down at our hands, like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he flipped his palm over, lacing his fingers through mine. His hand was warm, slightly shaky, but it didn't pull away. I think I've wanted this for a while, he said, barely above a whisper. I just didn't let myself know it. Our hands stayed there, entwined, neither of us talking for a long time. And then Ethan said something I'll never forget. I'm scared. I know, I told him. Me too. He leaned his head back against the couch and closed his eyes. But I'm still here, he said. So am I. The quiet that followed was different from before. It wasn't just two roommates sitting in the same room, killing time before bed. It wasn't even the kind of silence that creeps in after a confession. It was the stillness that happens when something inside you finally clicks into place, and you realize you've been waiting for this. Maybe your whole damn life. Ethan didn't open his eyes right away. He just sat there, head back, our fingers still loosely intertwined. I watched his chest rise and fall, slower now, steadier. You okay? I asked. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to give him space to speak again. He opened his eyes, turned his head. I don't know, but I think I'm better than I've been in a long time. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Ethan looked down at our hands, like they were something foreign but precious. This doesn't feel wrong, he said. I thought it might. I thought I'd feel weird or panicked or... He trailed off, shaking his head. But I don't. You don't have to explain it all, I said. Just feel it. That's enough for now. He smiled faintly, and there was something in it that hit me hard, a kind of quiet relief, like he was finally exhaling after holding his breath for months. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. Have you always felt this way? About me? The question caught me, not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud made it real. Not always, I said. At first, you were just my roommate, a guy with great taste in cereal and terrible taste in podcasts. He chuckled softly, and it broke some of the tension. But over time, I continued, yeah, I started to notice things. The way you talk when you're tired, how you sing when you cook, the way you look when you're thinking but don't want anyone to know. And I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was reading into it, that you'd never feel the same. Ethan's thumb brushed lightly across the back of my hand. I think I started noticing too. I just didn't let myself go there. There was a pause. Then he leaned forward, slow, unsure, like he was waiting for me to stop him. I didn't. When his forehead touched mine, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even particularly romantic. It was simple. Grounding. Like he needed to be close enough to know it was real. His breath was warm against my cheek, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Can I kiss you? My throat tightened, but I nodded. It started as barely more than a brush. His lips on mine, tentative, careful, searching. But the moment they met, something shifted. Like a locked door inside me swung open, and suddenly all the things I'd been pushing down for months came flooding in. His hand cupped the side of my neck, fingers curling slightly. I leaned into him, matching his pace, not rushing, not forcing, just being in it. Completely. It wasn't perfect. Our teeth bumped a little. His nose mashed awkwardly against mine. But none of it mattered. It was honest. It was him. And when we finally pulled back, there was no awkward laugh, no panic. Just Ethan, looking at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. I've wanted to do that for longer than I realized, he said. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. Me too. He ran a hand through his hair again, grinning almost shyly now. So what happens next? I thought about it for a second. About how complicated this could get, how uncertain. But I just said, we figure it out. He nodded, more to himself than to me. Then, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, Ethan stood up and reached out his hand. Come on, he said. Let's go to bed. I hesitated. Not out of fear, out of awe. Because somehow, without planning it, without expecting it, the night I thought would end, like all the others, had become the one I'd remember forever. I took Ethan's hand, let him pull me up from the couch, and for a moment we just stood there, hands still joined, faces inches apart. There wasn't a roadmap for this. No playbook. Just two guys trying to figure out what to do with something that had quietly been building for far too long. We didn't say a word as we walked down the hallway to his room. Our bare feet patted against the hardwood, each step impossibly loud in the silence of the apartment. It felt like sneaking out as teenagers again, except this time we were sneaking into something bigger, heavier, and far more real. He pushed the door open slowly. I'd been in his room 100 times, dropping off borrowed headphones, poking fun at his clutter, stealing gum from his nightstand. But tonight, it felt completely different. More intimate. Like walking into the part of him he didn't show anyone else. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed and looked up at me, unsure. You don't have to stay, he said. If it's too much, or... I cut him off by sitting down next to him, close enough that our knees touched again. I want to. His shoulders dropped slightly, the smallest sign of relief. Then, quieter, almost like he was afraid to jinx it, he said, okay. The room was dim, just the faint yellow glow of a desk lamp in the corner. It cast soft shadows across his face, making everything feel quieter, slower. We sat there in the hush, our bodies angled toward each other, but neither of us making the next move. It wasn't awkward. It was just careful. Eventually, Ethan shifted, one leg folding up onto the bed as he turned toward me. I keep thinking this is gonna feel wrong, but it doesn't. I looked at him. It won't. If we're honest with each other, it won't. He nodded, then reached up to touch my face. His fingers brushed along my jawline, hesitant, but gentle, like he was still trying to believe it was okay to do this. We kissed again, Slower this time. Less uncertainty, more knowing. He tasted like mint and whiskey. His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me in closer. I let myself melt into him, feeling the solid weight of his chest against mine, the warmth of his breath, the slight tremble in his fingers as they found the hem of my shirt. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "How do we go back to normal after this?" he whispered. "We don't," I said, just as softly, "but maybe we don't need to." He pulled back, just far enough to look at me. There was something in his eyes, equal parts fear and something else I hadn't seen before. Tenderness. We didn't sleep right away. Instead, we lay there on his bed, fully clothed, side by side, legs tangled. Sometimes talking, sometimes just breathing in sync. I told him about the first time I realized I liked him. He told me about a night a few months ago, where he caught himself watching me cook and didn't know why it made his chest feel tight. At some point, his arm slipped around me, and I let my head fall against his shoulder. "I don't know what this means," he said. "I don't know who I am right now." I nodded against his chest. "That's okay, we'll figure it out. Together." He kissed the top of my head, and then, finally, we slept. I woke up to the sound of Ethan's breathing, slow and steady beside me. It was barely morning, the kind of gray, pre-dawn light that makes everything feel softer, quieter, a little unreal. For a second, I didn't move, just lay there, blinking at the ceiling, trying to decide whether last night had actually happened, or if it had been some vivid dream born out of months of longing and maybe one too many emotional spirals. But then I turned my head and saw him, still curled slightly on his side, one hand resting between us on the mattress, and I knew. It had happened. All of it. And now we were here. His lips were slightly parted. His hair was a mess, and he looked peaceful, something I didn't think I'd ever seen on his face before. Ethan was a worrier by nature, a fixer, always trying to keep things under control. But now, he looked like someone who'd finally stopped fighting himself for a few hours. I wanted to reach out, trace my fingers over the curve of his jaw, press another kiss to his temple. But I didn't. I didn't want to wake him. I didn't want to rush whatever this was becoming. Instead, I just watched him for a little while, let myself feel it. The way his presence took up the room, the way my chest didn't feel tight anymore. Eventually, he stirred. Just a small shift, then a deeper breath as his eyes blinked open. It took him a second to register where he was, who he was with. When his gaze landed on me, he froze. "Hey," I said, voice low, a little hoarse from sleep. "Hey," he echoed, almost automatically. A pause. Then, "You stayed. I told you I would." He stared at me and I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, the worry creeping back in, the what now that had probably been waiting for him the second he woke up. "I don't regret it," he said, before I could say anything else. I nodded. "Good, me neither. But..." He sat up a little, propping himself against the headboard. "I'm trying to figure out what this means. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen, but I also don't know how to exist in it yet." I pushed myself up beside him. We were sitting close, knees touching under the covers, but neither of us reached for the other right away. "It doesn't have to mean anything huge yet," I said. "No labels, no pressure. We just keep being honest." He looked down at his hands, flexed them once, then looked back up. "And if people ask questions, we deal with it when we're ready." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I want to try. I'm scared, but I want to try." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Then that's enough for now." And it was. For that moment, in that bed, in that sliver of morning light that made everything feel strangely holy, it was enough. We sat there, in silence, leaning against each other, the beginnings of something unspoken finally allowed to grow roots. Ethan broke the stillness with a small smile. "You want coffee?" I grinned. "Only if you don't make that weak stuff you pretend is drinkable." He rolled his eyes and climbed out of bed. "I make excellent coffee. You make caffeinated water." Blasphemy. We moved like a couple who'd been doing this forever. bantering, brushing shoulders in the hallway, stealing glances across the kitchen counter. But underneath it all was that fragile awareness. This was new, this was delicate, this was real. And it wasn't just about sex or curiosity. It was about choosing each other quietly, without fanfare, in the ordinary light of day. The rest of that Saturday felt surreal. We stayed in, mostly, made pancakes that came out half-burnt, lounged in sweatpants, watched a dumb action movie with the sound too low because we were talking the whole time. Nothing big happened. But every brush of his hand, every casual glance held weight. Like we were both still trying to believe this was actually real, and not some fragile dream we'd both wake from any second. It wasn't awkward, but it was cautious. There was still a current between us, something charged and unspoken that neither of us wanted to rush. We were in a bubble, warm, quiet, safe. And then, that afternoon, the bubble popped. It started with a knock at the door. Ethan looked at me from the couch, his face tightening just a little. That subtle shift told me everything. He wasn't ready to share this yet, not even with whoever was on the other side of that door. I stood, smoothing down my hoodie as I headed toward the entryway. The door creaked open to reveal Tasha, Ethan's friend from law school, tall, energetic, the kind of person who talks with her hands and always shows up without warning. "Hey," she said, walking in before I could say anything. "Ethan here? He's not answering texts, and we were supposed to meet up for study group." I stepped aside, giving her room. Ethan appeared a second later, hair still messy from our lazy day. He gave me a brief, almost guilty look before turning to her with a smile that looked a little too rehearsed. "Hey, sorry," he said. "I lost track of time." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Didn't realize you were still alive." "I'm here," he said. "Just chilling." She glanced between us, then smirked slightly. "Chilling, huh?" Her eyes flicked to me. "You two have a good night or something?" It was meant to be a joke, casual, teasing, but the air between us snapped a little tighter. Ethan let out a laugh, too quick. "Nothing like that." I didn't say anything, just looked at the floor. Eventually, they disappeared into his room with textbooks, and I was left in the living room, scrolling aimlessly on my phone and trying not to spiral. Of course, we weren't ready to tell anyone. It had been one night, and it wasn't like Ethan owed me anything more than what we'd already shared. But still, something about the way he'd deflected, so fast, so hard, made something in my chest go tight. Later, after she left, Ethan came back out. I was still on the couch, pretending to be absorbed in a video on my phone. He sat down beside me, but not as close as before. "Hey," he said. "Hey." A beat. "I didn't know she was coming by," he added. "I wasn't expecting to have to—" "It's okay," I said quickly, cutting him off. "You don't have to explain." But he kept looking at me, like he wanted to say something else. His fingers tapped against the armrest. "It's not because I'm ashamed of you. Or this. I just freaked out a little." "I get it," I said, even though I wasn't sure I entirely did. "I mean it," he added. "This means something. It's not nothing." I finally looked at him. "Then tell me what it is." He hesitated, then leaned back and closed his eyes like he was trying to calm his own nerves. I don't know what to call it. I just know I've never felt like this before, and I'm scared of screwing it up by rushing or hiding or whatever. I nodded slowly. "We're allowed to not know yet." He opened his eyes again, softer now. "Will you be patient with me?" I reached out, took his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, even with all the uncertainty, all the noise of the outside world starting to trickle in, I believed it. The days that followed blurred together in that weird, quiet way life sometimes does when you're half living in your own head. Ethan and I kept orbiting each other, cooking together, watching TV, brushing shoulders in the hallway like nothing had changed. But everything had. It was like the world outside hadn't caught up to us yet, and we weren't sure if we wanted it to. We didn't talk much about that night. Not directly. It was easier to act like it had been a chapter we'd both read, but weren't ready to discuss. But the tension was still there, under every laugh, every casual glance, every quiet moment where we sat too close for it to mean nothing. I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. And sometimes, I looked back. But we were stalled. Until one night, a week later, I came home late from a writing workshop and found him sitting alone on the balcony, hoodie pulled over his head, a mostly untouched beer sweating on the little table beside him. The air was cooler, the city quiet, in that way it gets when everyone else is already asleep. I slid the door open and stepped out, my heart already thumping with that now familiar weight of something hanging between us. He didn't look at me at first, just sipped his beer, eyes fixed on nothing. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, slow. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" He glanced at me, then away. "You. Me. Everything." I sat down across from him, folding my arms against the chill. "Want to talk about it?" "I don't know how." "Try." He let out a shaky breath, then leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I've been trying to act like nothing happened," he said. "But it's driving me crazy, because every time I walk into a room and you're there, I feel like I'm standing in front of something I want so badly, but I'm too afraid to take it." I didn't say anything. I let him speak. I keep wondering what people will say, how it'll change things. I keep worrying about what it means, what it makes me. But the truth is, none of that matters when I'm with you. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were raw. "I miss you, even when we're in the same room." Those words knocked something loose in me. I swallowed hard, blinking away the sudden sting behind my eyes. "I miss you too," I said, "and I'm right here." He got up then, walked over to where I sat, and knelt down in front of me. "I don't want to pretend anymore." "Then don't." He reached for my hands and held them tight, like he needed an anchor. "I'm still scared," he said. "I am too," I admitted. "But that doesn't mean we can't do this." We sat like that, hands joined, faces close, the city behind us and the future ahead of us. "Come to bed," I whispered. This time, when we lay down together, it wasn't about testing boundaries or tiptoeing around the edge. It was full, present, mutual. Ethan kissed me like he meant it, slow, deliberate, no fear in it this time. His fingers curled around mine, our foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling in the dark. He didn't say anything after. Neither did I. We didn't need to. The next morning didn't feel like an aftermath. It didn't feel like regret or confusion, or the awkward silence of two people waking up after a mistake. It felt calm. Ethan was still asleep, arm flung loosely over my waist, his face turned toward mine on the pillow. His hair was a mess. His lips were slightly parted. He looked peaceful in a way that made my chest tighten. I lay there for a while, memorizing the way the sunlight hit his cheekbone, the small crease between his eyebrows that didn't quite go away, even when he slept. I'd never been in love before. Not really. Not in a way that made sense. But this, waking up like this, was the closest thing I'd ever felt to knowing. Eventually, he stirred, eyes blinking open, his arm tightening briefly before he realized where he was. He looked at me. There was no panic, no apology. "Hey," he murmured, voice scratchy with sleep. "Hey." A beat of silence. "Last night wasn't a mistake," he said. "I know." He pushed himself up on one elbow, his gaze more serious now. "I meant everything I said. I don't want to hide this. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." I nodded. "Me neither." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, then let his hand linger at the side of my face. "This is going to change everything, isn't it?" "Probably." "You still want to?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes." Later, over coffee, he sat across from me at the kitchen counter. He looked like himself again. Hoodie, messy hair, that easy slouch, but something had shifted. He wasn't guarded anymore. There was a softness to him now, a kind of quiet pride in the way he carried this new truth. He took a sip of his coffee and said, "I think we should tell people when we're ready." "Okay," I said. Like, start living it, not just between us. I nodded. Yeah, I want that too. He smiled, and for once, it wasn't uncertain. It was real. Sure. Grounded. And just like that, our lives began to tilt toward each other in a way that felt permanent. The story didn't end that morning. It began.